Hello and welcome back from the networking break. It's me, Tom, of course, from Secure World Digital. Up next, we've got an old friend of mine, Stephen Dougherty. He is the financial fraud investigator for the United States Secret Service. We're going to be talking about pig butchering, BEC attacks, and artificial intelligence, what the Secret Service wants you to know and how. Well, welcome, sir. It's great to have you. I'm going to interject some questions periodically, if you don't mind, but the floor is yours otherwise.
Looking forward to it. All right. So, guys, I'm kind of here to lay out what we're seeing in 2024 throughout some threat intelligence for you guys, and particularly how we're seeing these fraud schemes evolve. They are using increased technology, increased capabilities to really play on the psychology of their potential victims. So I'm going to lay kind of that out there. I'm going to talk kind of starting with the baseline. First thing I really want to talk about before I really get into everything that, we're going to talk about today is about the Secret Service. I want to put the message out there that, hey, many people think of us, that we are just there for our protective duties, for protecting our elected leaders. 100% true. That's a lot of our mission, but we have what's called an integrated mission, right? We were founded way back in 1865 to actually protect and secure the U.S. financial and economic infrastructure. Namely, that was through battling counterfeiters. Later, as our mission evolved, it got more into financial crimes, white-collar crime. Then as the 80s, the 90s, as electronic means of payment came into the world, we switched over to digital crimes, along with still financial crimes, counterfeiting, and then obviously our protective mission. So as we're doing these large-scale financial fraud cases, we realized there was a very large cyber nexus with pretty much all of them. Whether that's using the internet to discuss the crimes themselves, using it to steal PII, or what I'm going to show you today, how to steal really good sensitive information to then weaponize that against you later on down the line. But as we're working these cases, we realized, hey, I was working a case out of Washington. I was looking at a suspect who would travel to Miami. He had friends in a network in Miami. Those guys in Miami had a network in Los Angeles that they worked with. So we realized a lot of these cases were interconnected, not just in the country, but around the world. So what we did was we took all of our different individual task forces in each office. So we would have a electronic crimes task force, a financial crimes task force, a counterfeiting task force in each office, and merged them all under one group that is then kind of managed, not managed, but kind of as a fusion center information sharing hub is our GIOC, our Global Investigative Operations Center. So I just showed you that map of all of our different field offices with cyber fraud task forces. Well, the GIOC kind of helps everybody communicate and stay on the same page across the country and then across the world. We also work with other federal law enforcement agencies. The private sector is huge with our partnerships from the GIOC, among other things. So really just kind of put in perspective that if you see a cybercrime or you're talking about one, please think that it's not just something that the FBI may handle or another federal law enforcement agency, but the Secret Service, we really are trying to be at the forefront in combating these types of crimes. All right, so let's start getting into the thick of it. And I really want to start things off with a baseline for cyber fraud, right? Everybody thinks cyber fraud, they hear all of these, they think it's a very technical thing. They think it's, something that only computer scientists could do, but it's really not. And it's all kind of driven and boiled down to one simple thing. Cyber fraud is pulled off and allowed when somebody gets a hold of what I call contemporaneous and privileged information and uses that to weaponize against you. And that information can be anything. So it can start out with, say, a phishing attack or a smishing attack, something like that, where you'll get a random text message, which, Tom, I think you just got, that we were talking about earlier. But they're trying to get some type of knowledge and information out of you, whether that's trying to get your bank account information, a username and password, something like that, to then weaponize. Or on a more enterprise front, they're trying to steal information that has financial payments that are due, invoices, contract information, accounts receivable, and then weaponize that against you. Or think about it this way, on a more technical level, the contemporaneous and privileged information they're trying to get is vulnerability. So that can be through malware. That's the information they get. They understand where the vulnerability is, and that's how they will put in something like ransomware. Further along the line, we have now that's emerged, it's called pig butchering. I'll talk about it a little bit further. But they're really trying to get you to be in a comfortable relationship with them as fraudsters, but you think they're legitimate people, and start investing money with them, particularly in the form of cryptocurrency. So it's all, again, that contemporaneous and privileged information that our bad actors then weaponize back against you. All right, so these are 2022 stats. We're still kind of waiting on 2023. It's all coming along. We should have the stats for 2023 pretty much imminently here within the next couple weeks. But still pretty staggering from 2022, 10.3 billion in loss, 2,100 plus average complaints a day, 651,000 complaints over the past 5 years, and 77.3 million complaints going back to its inception. This data is from our good friends over at ic3.gov. Guys, I'm going to say this again too. If you ever are hit with even a thwarted attack or some type of scam, you can report it to ic3.gov. Great resource, really easy to go up there, put in the information, the email that was sent to you, the phone number, if you did send money where, and it's a great way to not only tabulate stats, but also to get investigators to help with your case. So ic3.gov, big resource. All right. Another thing I want to stress upon here, especially in 2024, is that everyone is vulnerable. I used to sit on my sort of pedestal I have and beat my chest and say, hey, business email compromise is always the largest form of cyber fraud loss, right? And think about it. It makes sense because they're really trying to hit companies. They're trying to get the big score. Average BEC is somewhere around $150,000 per loss per event, right? So you think our bad actors are only going to want to target big companies with a lot of money. Well, that's not true anymore. In 2022, pig butchering, which again I'll talk about a little bit further, took over as the highest loss. Now, pig butchering doesn't affect really big businesses or anything like that. For the most part, it has, but it goes after individuals. They're trying to get people to invest their money under what they think is legitimate circumstances, and then all of a sudden at the end of the day ends up being a fraudulent scheme for some way or some means. So that's really where it's hitting individuals, but also BEC and other cyber fraud hits individuals as well. We have, again, largest companies in the world being hit, medium and small businesses that get hit and sometimes can't absorb the hit, and then down to individuals, whether that's the pig butchering schemes, whether it's romance scams, whether it's real estate BEC where you're trying to buy your home and your down payment gets stolen, stuff like that can really, affect everyone. And I was doing press about a year ago, and I was talking to a reporter, and she asked me a question that really threw me off guard, and I kind of didn't have an answer for it right away. But she asked me, I've been doing this since 2016 and tracking all sorts of different types of cases along both the cyber realm and the money laundering financial crimes realm. And she asked me, she's like, hey, what doesn't surprise you anymore? And I just kind of stopped. I'm like, I haven't really thought about that. I haven't really thought about it in that way, but really, and then it immediately came to me how unscrupulous our bad actors have become. They don't care who they target. If there's a financial transaction involved, they are going to target it. We've seen them target charities, nonprofits, food banks, churches, community service groups. They don't care. If there's money, they're going after it. They don't care who they hurt. So really, one thing to take away today is that everyone's vulnerable, and then it's also everyone's responsibility to protect each other with these fraud schemes. And hopefully by the end of it, I'll tell you some tips and tricks on how to do that. All right. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of the way a lot of these fraud schemes work because I feel like we've covered that in the past. But here's one thing I really want you guys to take home today. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a business, if you're a bank, if you're an individual. This is something you really need to look out for because it's still their cutting edge tactic of getting information. This is how they get that contemporaneous and privileged information to then weaponize against you. So what they do is they try to access your email account in some way, right? Usually that's either in the form of a phishing attack, which I'll show you an actual example of here in a minute. It could be in the form of buying just a bulk data breach that has a bunch of email addresses and passwords in it. And then they just go ahead and try that or try some form of that password to see if they can get in that way. There's other ways. There's a lot of social engineering tactics that go into it that allow our bad actors to gain access to an email account. We had one recently. It was a pretty big one. I can't talk about specifically, but they used a popular social media networking site to locate employees, particularly new employees, reached out, talked to them, convinced them that they were, from the IT department, and they just needed a quick look at their email accounts just to make sure all their settings were correct and all their privacy and security settings were correct. They're new members of the company. They're like, yeah, sure, here you go. Here's my, email address, and here's the password I just set up. And I haven't enabled multi-factor authentication yet. So our bad actors went in that way. But once they go in, they only log in once. They don't want to hang around. They don't want to sit in there and, get detected that there's multiple logins from multiple different IPs. They only want to log in once. So they log in once they have your username and password. They go to your settings and they set up an email rule to auto forward out all of your emails and then delete the auto forwarded email. So that's all happening in the background. So all your emails that are coming in are getting sent out to our bad actor so that they can read those and then weaponize them against whether it's you or a third party you're doing business with. So as hygiene, one of the probably number one things I recommend, other than having multi-factor authentication and having safe passwords, is monitoring your email rules. Go in and take a look, every few days, every couple of weeks, depending on what business you're doing. Make sure those are clear. All right. So I really want to kind of talk about the psychology of some of these attacks and the way they kind of roll out. This was an actual phishing attack that a victim received. And we all receive these emails that look 100% legitimate. We get them every day from my agency. Here are emails we call in our spam filter. They may be marketing emails. They could have an attachment that didn't pass the sniff test. So then we have to, open that email, click them, and see if we want those emails to come in. So our victim receives this email Wednesday, July 17th, in the middle of the summer. He gets this in. He's like, oh man, all right, let me get this done. I want to go play some golf. So he gets this email and he clicks read message right here, this red box, thinking, okay, it'll bring me to my emails. All right. So instead, it launched a browser window and took him here. Oh, okay, I guess I got to view this in webmail. No problem. Well, use webmail, when I'm at home or when I'm, working from the road, whatever. So he goes and puts in his email address. So real simple, blah, blah, blah. He hits next. Then it brings him to put in his password. He goes, oh, I got to put in my password. Hold on. Puts in his password, hits next. And then nothing happens. Just spins and spins and spins. Ultimately gets a timeout. He thinks to himself, well, I'll look at this tomorrow. I got a tea time in 20 minutes. So he rolls out, he leaves. He's not paying attention. But what did happen, obviously, was his email address and password had been sent out to our bad actor, who then goes and easily logs in and goes and sets up that email rule that can be seen right here. So real simple. This is, we use Outlook 365 as our victim, but they hit every email suite doing the same exact tactic. They come in, they go to rules, they set up a very specific rule here. And, you may get 1,000 emails a day. Our bad actor's real busy. He's got fraud going on all over the place. So he doesn't want to get and read all of your 1,000 emails. He just wants the good ones. So he's going to create an email rule here that will filter out and send him emails that contain the word account, wire transfer, invoice, what have you, anything that has good information that he can then weaponize back against you or a third party you're doing business with. Another thing to always think about. Oftentimes with these type of attacks, there's multiple parties involved in the attack, and usually the financial victim doesn't have a compromise. Oftentimes it's more with the third party they're doing business with that has the compromise. So you have to think about that. There's multiple vectors here going on. So again, you gotta have to think about the whole ball game here of what's going on. But yeah, this is what a traditional kind of attack looks like. These are still going on today and still a very popular tactic. So keep an eye out for those email rules. But again, they're kind of playing on that, psychology, right? They're trying to find somebody who's going to click on it. They're doing their research to see who may have access to certain information, and then they launch their attack. And then they just surreptitiously monitor behind the scenes, waiting for something to happen. Once they get their good info, they'll go and weaponize. And you think to yourself, hey, Steve, now I have all this good, security practice set up, blah, blah, blah. I've done network intrusion runouts where I've found an unauthorized email rule that had been created on their system for 18 months. So our bad actors were just waiting for 18 months. And during those 18 months, their password had changed numerous times. They added multi-factor authentication as well. But since that email rule still existed on their system, all that good information was coming out. So really, when we do our network intrusions, and Tom, I don't know if you want to touch on this now, but when we go out and we see these things, you may have great cyber hygiene, and we love that. That's what we want to see. But sometimes these things linger on the back end of a system. So it's really interesting what we find when we do our network intrusion runouts.
Actually, good time, actually, because I was curious about some of that stuff. Do you ever find other stuff though? Like, are they messing with you, or do they leave things like little carrots behind for like the IT people or law enforcement? Like, you're never going to catch us. I mean, is it like the movies where you see that stuff, or is it just more mundane?
It's a little more mundane than that, because again, these guys, particularly like BEC actors, they want to really hide behind the scenes. They want to avoid detection as much as possible because they're just waiting for that big score. Now, once their big score comes, every now and then they'll do something stupid, like try to reach back out, or they'll try to interject in another financial transaction going on, or re-weaponize against the victim. And I'm going to talk about that in a second of how we're seeing that more in 2024. But yeah, so usually when we do our network intrusion runouts, we're coming with one very simple task. Well, two. So find the compromise and figure out who the bad guys are. We're not coming in, our Ray jackets and multiple guys, boxes, taking everything out. We just want to come take a quick image of your server if that's what we need to do. Or if we know it's a BEC attack, I can even just give you guys a script to run across your email suite, and it will actually sniff out and find every external auto-forwarding email and inbox rule in the email environment. I actually could push that online too, across just via a link where you go and download it, run it, and send me the results. So we've gotten very streamlined in the information we're looking for to, again, find the compromise and get you guys made whole, and then find our bad actors.
So you're not really like, no one comes in and like all the employees leave for the day and then there's like no productivity anymore. You're actually just like,
no, not really. As long as your systems are good to go, we want you guys to go on business as usual. In fact, hold on, I'll show you what we do. So we'll come out. I'll say, hey, what's going on? What's your, what do you got? What are you guys looking at? And they're like, oh, we think we've narrowed it down to this one email account that's only used on this one laptop. I'm like, cool. We'll hook this up. We'll take a forensic image. We'll see if we can get when, the computer was accessed or when the email account was logged into, pull off the IPs, throw all the data on this, and I go back to my merry little layer and start looking through it to see what I can find. That's about it. So we're really trying to be as less disruptive as possible and keeping you guys working, keeping your business going.
Gotcha. One last one, and then I'll let you continue on for a bit. You'd mentioned, that through social media, I think I know which one, but they figured out where people work or whatever. But how are they identifying people for like the pig butchering stuff? Because like, I don't have a ton of crypto myself, but I get hit all the time on all my different socials. While I was waiting for you today, somebody texted me and was like, hey, but you can't guess who this is, friend. And I just responded back, a scammer or a pig butcher, and then they never responded back. But usually I mess with them. So I guess I have a two-part question. How do they get to me? Or is it like a spray and pray kind of thing? And then should I play along with them? Because I feel like I'm savvy, but should I be messing with them to save others? Because I feel like I'm like wasting their time. How does that work?
So two great questions, really. So yeah, spray and pray is kind of, that's sort of their goal. They want to spread as big of a net as possible to see if they can just get that one victim to start sending money, right? And they have scripts. They have all different things that are already pre-made that they just deploy out. So yours started with, that text. We call that an SMS or phishing attack. To again see if they can start getting information from you. We recently handled one where it was a text. It was the same thing. It was like, hey, is this so-and-so? And the person responded back, no. And the guy responded back, oh, well, I'm so-and-so here. I'm looking for this person because I want to talk to him about this. And then slowly but surely starts getting, going on what's going on, that they have some, massive IP coming out for a crypto firm, and that you can get on the ground floor and see, 75% or 100% ROI within like a month, and to send us 10 grand in crypto. And they'll even give them a link on that brings you to Google that will show you the closest Bitcoin ATM to you. And they just have you go there, submit cash into it or whatever, and then send them the Bitcoin that you derive from that Bitcoin ATM. And boom, they have it. And then they'll show you all these different things like your money's making money, you've tripled your money, blah, blah, blah. But it's all fake. It's, not real by any means. And yeah, so it can be smishing. It can be social media. They're constantly looking for it. I mean, I can go through my phone and look at all the different profiles I have that get like a, hey, you, for like some attractive female that I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what you want. So,
right.
It could be funny to just drop a Bitcoin wallet in there and say, hey, yeah, here it is. Just let's do this. But in terms of responding back to them, honestly, that's up to you. We recommend you don't, just because, we don't want you to expose yourself further. But if you keep it where you're just, confronting them, usually what it does is it leads them to turn right away. because they don't want to sit there. They don't have time to sit there and mess with you because they're trying to be as efficient as possible. So you say, you know, I know you're a scammer, blah, 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 you're a jerk. And they just don't respond because they've already deleted your stuff and they've moved on to somebody else.
Makes sense. Excellent. I've got a bunch more questions for you later on. So please continue.
Yep. All right. So as a sequitur, after that phishing attack, they got in, they got all the good contemporaneous information. And let's take it back and set up that it was actually a closing officer at a title company that got compromised, right? So he got compromised, and now our bad actors can see every closing real estate transaction coming up that closing officer was handling. Not good at all. So in this case, all they did was they took the information that they had about a closing coming up, created a spoofed email here, real easy, escrow closing title at your basic generic mail or ISP, and then they just wrote this kind of clunky, sort of odd phishing or odd email. It's not a phishing email; it's an actual attack email. But they have some red flags in here. The grammar's not the best, so to avoid closing delay, they want you to rush. They want you to do this right now. Move. And then they want to control the lines of communication, right? They don't want you picking up the phone, calling the actual title company. They just say, just email me here. So now they can control the email communication and not worry about you calling and tipping them off of their scam. So this was the email that was sent to a real victim that ended up in a actual loss. So the title company gets hit. They see, you know, the closing coming up. They craft this cute little email here, send it to our victim, and have them wire their down payment to a different account other than the title company. So yeah, that's as simple as it is. Now, look at some of these red flags and remember them, because I want to talk to you about how in 2024 these things have totally changed, and we've lost a lot of these red flags through different means that I'm going to touch on. But, you know, it's just kind of clunky language here. It's just odd. All right. So that's what an attack looked like. I want to talk about some trends we're seeing and talk about why different industries get hit. I want to caveat this. These fraud attacks, as I mentioned before, hit every industry. It doesn't matter. This can be replaced with education, manufacturing, construction, real estate, investing, venture capital, you name it. If there's, again, a financial transaction involved, our bad actor is going to try to hit it. But particularly, let's talk about why financial services can be a primary target here for cyber fraud. One, the impact is driven by customers. So as a financial services firm, it's often out of your hands, and it's more about the behavior of your customers on your platform. It's oftentimes, you know, nothing you can do about it. It's you have a victim that gets a phishing email. It says, hey, this is your, or phishing text or email. It doesn't have to be either. It says, hey, this is your bank. You know, your account has been compromised. Give us a call at this number and we'll get it fixed for you. And then they pose as the bank. They get you all scared. They say, hey, you need to go in your bank account, wire your money to this account, and we'll fix your bank account and send the money back to you. Well, clearly that's a fraud scheme, and our victim just lost all the money in their bank account. This happens both to large customers, meaning companies and businesses that bank with you, and also small individuals, small businesses as well. But ultimately, it can lead to losses to a financial firm because you have that victim who's now out their money. They're going to be like, hey, my bank did nothing to protect me, and they're going to leave the bank. They're going to go somewhere else, take their money elsewhere, which can be a loss to a financial services firm. You have both witting and unwitting customers also using your banking platform to conduct these fraud schemes. Witting, obviously, it's bad actors who know what they're doing. They know what to do, their tactics and everything. But then you have unwitting customers, and that comes in the effect of romance scam victims. Even these pig butchering victims we're talking about have been involved in some of these things, where they're totally convinced to provide their bank account and banking information to a bad actor who will then use that bank account to launder money, get funds from other victims to keep in the U.S. and then move out of the country, stuff like that. So you have this sort of both witting and non-witting behavior on your platform. Numerous transactions to redirect. Banks, you see it all. You see every financial transaction there pretty much is. Even now, if it's crypto, it's still kind of hitting a bank in some way, shape, or form. So our bad actors are able to redirect and steal pretty much all of those. They've pretty much come up with a way to target pretty much every financial transaction that's out there. And that's the that's the thought process we have to have, that they are going to target. It's not an if scenario, but a when scenario when thinking about these things. Fraud and money laundering on your platform. I've been investigating money laundering for a long time, and that's how I actually ventured into the cyber realm. And I can't tell you how many times different banks, you know, you would call them and say, hey, we have a massive money launderer on your platform doing X, Y, and Z. And they're like, oh, great. Okay, cool. We'll shut him down. And yeah, that's great. You guys shut him down. But then he just bounces to another platform and does the same thing and bounces to another platform. I mean, I've done money laundering investigations where I've had to compile 90 to 100 bank accounts used by one individual to launder money across every major bank. You name it, he was there. Bank impersonation schemes, I touched upon that up here, where they're posing as you to get a victim to send money or do something they wouldn't have, because from a banking perspective, they think you're a person of authority, and you're saying, hey, you need to do this, you need to send this money here, you need to do whatever. And it's a very convincing scheme, because our bad actors are now using supplemental technology, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, to really enhance these fraud schemes. So they're calling, saying the bank, our victim looks up the number, it comes back and it says the bank, because they're using a spoofed number to call our victim. So when we talk to our victims, he's like, hey man, like I went to a website that said it was this bank. They're using a spoofed domain. He's like, hey, I called the number back that was there, or Googled the number that called me, and that's the bank's number. And I'm like, not really. The smishing and phishing, talked about that. We have the account takeovers, where not only are they trying to convince a victim to send their money to another account for some fraudulent means, or they're just trying to get into your account and take it over. They realize that a lot of people still either don't have multi-factor authentication set up, or bad actors have figured out ways around multi-factor authentication that a simple smishing attack that would have easily been thwarted can now still be carried out, because our bad actors can get through all of those obstacles. Elder abuse fraud schemes, I've been seeing a lot of these. Just on a personal basis, I've fielded probably 5 or 6 phone calls from different friends in the past 6 months where their parents or grandparents have been hit by one of these schemes. And it usually as simple as they just got an email that looked like it was from their bank. They clicked the link, they provided the information. Next thing you know, their bank account's empty. And there's all these other different fraud schemes to go along with it. So if you have odd activity from an elderly person, you really need to take a look at it, because there could be a very good chance that there's some fraud scheme going on. Open source information to weaponize. We talked about and touched on how you can go out on different social media sites and figure out who works where and what they do, where they've worked in the past, blah, 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 blah. You can even go and figure out what their likes are, what they're involved in, if they're involved in a community group or anything like that. You can find out all of that information just from open source research. It's amazing what you can find out there on people, if it's easily out there and accessible, which for a lot of us it is. And that's not by anything we've done. It's just operating in the society we have in 2024. So really a lot of information out there that our bad actors can weaponize, that can hit back and cause loss to a financial services group. And then obviously large scale and complex attacks can lead to devastating losses. We at the Secret Service, we do a lot of tabletop exercises. We call them cyber incident response scenarios. And I just put one together and wrote one based off a couple different attacks we've seen out there and kind of mashed them all into one. But it's essentially a company A, company B, and a financial services firm involved in the middle. There was supposed to be a large transfer of funds. And during that, obviously, the information gets intercepted, the funds get redirected, and then also a bunch of other information, including PII, gets stolen. And our bad actors keep coming back with all these different pieces of information to cause further attacks down the line. And lastly, I just have this down here real big, real bold. We have the urgent need for financial services and law enforcement to work together. The attacks are happening over with you guys. So when we get a victim, we want to come to you. We want to share information as efficiently as possible to, 1, get our money back for the victim, 2, see if we can figure out who the bad actors are, because we can do that by tracing money throughout the different steps of it's laundered, whether that's through regular currency or whether that's through crypto. We can do it. So really there is a need. So let this be a call out to say, hey, if you're in one of these financial services groups or other groups that may have information that may help with this, let us know. Let's communicate and figure out how to share information in an efficient way so we can help everybody involved. All right. So 2023 was an interesting year in cyber fraud. Tom, we talked then and I was saying, okay, it's a brave new world. What are we going to see? And I don't want to say I was right, but a lot of the stuff I said would come to fruition is here. Like you and I have had some fun chats, whether that's with a pint or, preparing for one of these, and the stuff we're seeing, and man, it's here. So, to keep up with what we're seeing, cryptocurrency is still coming in loud and hot, whether that's the fraud scheme in general, or a means to launder funds. I'm actually going to show you how I've used AI to create a great email to convince somebody to send money to crypto. I'll show you
Yeah,
exactly how I did
something real
that.
quick on that, Stephen. Sorry. I noticed like over the weekend, crypto went way up. Like Bitcoin went way up. Is that because scamming activity is moving that bar? I mean, I don't expect you to necessarily know the market that way, but I mean,
Yeah.
do you notice like if there's like a bunch of ransomwares happening that spikes, and then you guys are, hey, there's stuff happening. I mean, is that like a barometer for you at all?
Yeah, I'm by no means a market expert, but it definitely could be. It obviously is a factor in some way, whether it's 1 to 2% of the market, or even higher, depending on that, how it can influence it. And yeah, I would say that's one of the drivers. I mean, obviously there are many others that we can talk about, with currency, interest rates, all those different things that have a ripple effect on cryptocurrency. But really, it being used as a modicum of fraud has helped it kind of grow a little bit. It's not an indictment of that system. It's just its goal to decentralize and make finance easier. Obviously, our bad actors who want to go as quickly as possible and be as most efficient as possible see that as well. So they're using it in those same means because they know they can get that money a lot faster. So real quick, a BEC happens, right? A company loses $500,000, and the traditional way to launder that money would be to go from the first Money Mule account to a second Money Mule account, maybe to a cashier's check, to a third Money Mule, and then finally the money's wired out overseas, and then slowly but surely trickles its way back to the BEC director or the boss. But think about that now, right? Now, instead of going through that whole chain, that first Money Mule that received that $500,000, you can now convince them through different means to say, hey, instead of sending that money to a bank account, here, just send it to my Coinbase wallet here. Go to Coinbase, set up a wallet, put it in there, and then move it to me. Boom, bang, done. And now our bad actor has direct access to those funds in a very efficient way. They're not losing 10, 15% along the way each hop. They only have one hop, and then they're keeping the overwhelming majority of the funds. So it's just the efficiency factor that's in it.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I've got a few. I'm cheating. I'm looking ahead. I've got a bunch of questions now that I'm looking at some of these bullet points. But I'll chill out and wait till you get there.
Chime in whenever, man. Chime in whenever. Okay. But exploitation factor increase. What's that? That kind of sounds odd. So that was a term that kind of came out of ransomware, where first you get hit with a ransomware and they would just say, hey, we're locking up your data. If you want to back pay us this amount of Bitcoin. Now they say, okay, well, you're not paying us yet or fast enough. We're going to start releasing this data onto the dark web or to a competitor in some way that doesn't make you look good. So they're increasing that exploitation factor. How does that come along in other cybercrime? Well, let's take, for example, what I just talked about, where a company gets hit for a large-scale BEC, but also PII was stolen. So what we'll see is if a company falls victim to one of these attacks, several months later, you'll have things like their employees reporting that they haven't gotten paid. And then you go back and look, and their payroll was actually diverted, because somebody posed as them, sent an email to HR saying, hey, I changed my direct deposit, send it here instead. You'll have stuff like that. You'll still have some data leaking. You'll still have further on attacks because now they have all of the email addresses associated with the company. They can start pen testing and see what other email accounts they can get into. So they keep going back to the well on these fraud schemes now. They don't just, it's not one and done for them anymore. And then now, yep, the pig in the room, pig butchering, that's going off on an industrialized scale, literally. And Tom, we talked about how, you want to go back and talk to these people. You want to try and, respond back. And these guys are oftentimes victims of human trafficking, and they're doing it by the thousands. So, they're in some country and they get an email saying, hey, come move here. We're going to provide you with housing, a great job, training, blah, 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 blah. And they convince you to go move to some country where we have limited access. And they put you in literally just these tenement apartment buildings with like a small little cell. And you're told, okay, you work here now, you live here now. You can leave in 5 years when you worked off your debt. And your job is to commit scams all day. And they do it by the thousands. And most of the time they're focusing on cryptocurrency, but we see them move into other types of fraud schemes as well, such as romance scams, stuff like that.
That's terrible. I mean, because now it's like they're double dipping on how evil they can possibly be.
Yeah, right. And trust me, I have conversations with my wife some days where I'm just like, it's like, you will not believe what I saw today. And it's just, yeah, no, it's getting worse out there. But yeah, so that's the big one in the room right now. So my advice to everybody listening, cryptocurrency is a good thing, but you really need to be careful about investing in it, where you're sending your money. Make sure you're doing it with somebody you know is 100% trusted and vetted. Do not leave anything up to chance. Run everything to the ground. And if it smells too good or looks too good, it probably is too good to be true. So really be careful out there in that world.
And honestly, hit up somebody in law enforcement if you're questioning anything. I mean, ideally, you already have that relationship with somebody like Stephen or their counterparts in other crime-fighting task forces. But I mean, you can always hit these guys up and ask them stuff. That's what they're there for.
Yep. 100%. We'll talk about more about how they can do that in a few minutes. Increasingly sophisticated phishing sites, guys. I showed you one that was from back in 2022 that got through a lot of filters. And they're getting even better. And I'm going to talk about this kind of down here a little bit, but we're seeing phishing as a service where our bad actors are setting up these really good phishing sites. And instead of running schemes themselves, they're just selling access to it. Actually, one night I was kind of disillusioned. I'm like, all right, how much does it take to actually set up a properly running BEC group that I can make money on? As I said, it's averages about $150,000 a loss right now. So I started doing some research and digging, and I figured out I could buy a pretty good phishing kit for probably like $50. It may be old, it may not work most of the time, but it only really has to work once I get in and get that good information. So now I have good information, right? I know I'm going to weaponize to get somebody to send their money. So I need a bank account now, right? Or I need a crypto wallet, whatever. I went and did some research. I'm like, all right, what really does it take to get a bank account that I can use to launder funds? Oh, you can actually go on the dark web and find somebody who does romance scams, and they have a bunch of bank accounts to sell where it'll receive some money. The bank accounts are seasoned, meaning they've been open for a long time, so they're not going to get the fraud warnings. And, they'll sell it to me for $200. Oh, sweet. So for $250, that's pretty much all I need. I'm up and running now. So for $250, I could pull off a BEC, potentially make 150 grand a pop. So, yeah. No, I don't know. Tom, I should probably retire. Anyway, moving on.
Or you just gave a lot of people a bad idea.
Yeah. So
you guys might be moving the wrong way.
You notice how I didn't tell you the exact places I went to do this, right?
Right. Actually, I want to follow up with you on that, though, because you're talking about non-technical actors like these phishing people, and you're probably going to get into this, but I mean, you've got like smarter people now, because there's like you've got the deep fake technology happening, and that's not just some guy that's like, I just bought this and I sent it out. This is somebody that actually knows something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, they are seeing it as a more sometimes lucrative means to legitimate employment, or they're in an area or geographic region that doesn't have legitimate employment. So they learn up, they study, they figure out how to do this, and that's their job. That's what they do. That's how they feed their families. For real. It's, that's the world we're dealing with. And the non-technical actors in the space, is really kind of an interesting phenomena I've seen because, back in the early days, I say when I started, each group you can kind of see a footprint or a thumbprint, on the type of scheme and how it was carried out and kind of say, okay, this is probably a group here. This is probably a group here. But now we have these non-technical actors in the space where anybody can do this anywhere. They can literally just go and buy the as a service. And, I talked about as a services expansion down here. We're seeing it not only with phishing or, money laundering. We're actually seeing this as violence as a service too, which is, not a good turn in numerous ways. There was a couple in Ireland who were laundering funds for one of these groups, and they decided, hey, instead of me sending, I got $100,000, instead of me sending the 90,000 I said I was going to do, I'm just going to send them 10 grand and keep the 90. Well, they did that, and there wasn't much discussion after that because they just went violence as a service, hired somebody to go firebomb their house. So, yeah. So it's expanded to, other things. Industry and target indiscriminate. Touched upon that. These guys do not care who they hit. Again, as long as there's a financial transaction involved, they're going after it. Use of forums to change ideas. I call out Telegram. I don't care. That's where, if you want to learn how to commit fraud, you can go on these forums and start figuring it out. These guys are sharing ideas. They're selling ideas. You can even watch videos on YouTube. The rapid exchange of ideas that the internet was supposed to be, obviously is there and it's come to fruition, but it's also there for fraud too. So, these ideas, like when one guy figures it out here, it literally goes viral in a sense in the fraud world. just like that. Whereas before it would take, months or years for that, those tactics to go elsewhere or, to move here. But now it's, within hours. Touch on as a service expansion, and then guys, just increase complexity in traditional fraud schemes. And I'm going to show that here in a minute about what we're seeing. But BEC, Tom, you and I were kind of taken aback by this $25 million deepfake attack that happened in Hong Kong, which when I saw that, my jaw was on the floor. So we know deepfakes are involved.
I was like, this one, I want to set this one up again. And tell me if I'm doing it wrong. But basically, this guy joins a Zoom or a Teams call. There's already people on it that he thinks are from his organization. And they're just kind of shooting the breeze about their weekend and their families and stuff. And this guy's just kind of waiting for the meeting to actually start. But these other people, if I'm not mistaken, they look and sound just like his coworkers and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what sold him was they're talking about their families and what they had just done for the weekend. And he authorizes $25 million.
Yep. So let's talk about that. Let's set that up. So it's still the same attack that I talked about way back in the beginning. It's contemporaneous and privileged information. So our bad actors somehow figured out, maybe it's through that open source research I talked about what those coworkers may be doing. So, maybe they looked up, on Facebook that they had kids. And so they took their kids to their soccer game, or, that they have a vacation house, over here. Or they like going to gamble in Macau. We're in Hong Kong here, of all places. So, they do that research, and then that's how they use it. So you took a very basic, almost socially engineered fraud scheme, and you threw technology at it, and you got $25 million out of it. How about that?
It's sneaky genius that unfortunately I wish we could use to get to like Mars or Pluto instead. How do you get the voice and the image? That's a lot of groundwork. I mean, it's worth the payday, I guess, but there's a lot of preparing for that.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, on the record, I'm still down to harvest the asteroids. I think that's our best bet. But anyway, going back to here, you essentially have to go and, figure out and record deepfakes for all these different people, have them interact in a way that's, relatively natural and convincing. It's a lot of work to get into it. But further, so romance scams, let's talk about that. Romance scams are directly tied into now pig butchering, because that's oftentimes how they convince you to send crypto. It's done first. They want to create a trusted relationship with you. What's the most trusted relationship we have? It's usually with a romantic partner. That's who we're telling our secrets. That's who we're talking to. That's who we have that trust with. So they're using romance scams for these other fraud schemes now. And the romance scams themselves have gotten more complex because they are using deepfakes to convince the victims that, I actually talked to them. I FaceTimed with them, and it was them. It was their voice. They were moving around, but actually it's just a deepfake. That's what it is. And also we can't forget about our generative AI friends, who our fraudsters are using these different generative AI to write these really good elaborate scripts to use to attack and create romance scams. Same thing with advanced fee fraud schemes. Similar thing. Very much, gaining your trust and using these different tactics that I'm going to show a few to convince you to send money. And lastly, we just want to put this out there. We're still seeing a ton of this, and it's pretty devastating to different portions of the population, but sextortion. They are essentially figuring out and reaching out via social media to contact you. They are sharing, romantic or sexually exploitative material with you, thinking you've developed some sort of relationship, and convince you to then also share that information back, or, whether it's video, pictures, what have you. And then as soon as they get that, they immediately weaponize that and come back and blackmail you and say, haha, no, just kidding. I am going to release this to all of your friends and family unless you send me, however much in cryptocurrency, so I don't release it. And it's leading to a lot of mental damage, including suicides that are pretty damaging to the friends, family, and population of the victims. So if you see something odd like this, definitely step in and stop it. It's something that we should be able to prevent. But again, that sort of, how do I say this in a way that's nice? But just they don't care who they're targeting, right? They, it doesn't matter. Vulnerable populations are easy. They're going to hit them, and they're going to try and get money out of them. So they don't care. All right. So let's get in the fun parts here. Let's get into some technical applications we're seeing in the world of fraud. I'm going to show some AI-generated attack emails in a few minutes that I created myself, and I by no means am a genius in these sort of things. I know how to fight them and investigate them. Not the most creative one with launching them, but even I was able to launch some pretty good attacks. Spoof guard, callback spoofing. I talked about that from the banking perspective, where they can set up a fake phone number that looks like it's the bank and use a company called Spoof Card, which I don't think should be allowed to exist, but they do. And here's actually an ad for them. So you can use it, to spoof the number. You can be a man, you can be a female, you can add in all different things to try to convince whoever you're talking to that you are who you are. Simple service online, yeah. SIM swap. So we talk about how great multi-factor authentication is, and it really is. Everybody should have it, no matter what. If you have any system that has PII, any sensitive information whatsoever, it should have a multi-factor authentication on it. However, our bad actors do figure out ways to get around that. One of the ways is SIM swap. So essentially, SIM swap, what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to clone your SIM card and swap it into a different phone and take over your phone number and everything associated with that. So if you were using your phone for multi-factor authentication, they now have the capability to respond and access accounts via that multi-factor authentication, just by doing a SIM swap right here. Deepfakes. I have a lot of friends who are in this world that we've been referring to. They are on the nice side, even though they like to tease me a lot. And I'm going to show you how they actually did that. They actually created a deep fake of me. I'm going to play that here in a second. Phone snatching syndicates. So this is an interesting thing we're seeing. People, ever since the beginning of cell phones, have gotten their cell phone stolen. Usually you think, hey, okay, whatever. They're probably just going to wipe it and sell it on the black market somewhere. Who cares? Not anymore. Once they get the phone, they're figuring out ways to crack into the phone via numerous means. We've seen phones be taken, and within less than an hour, they were able to access bank accounts and other platforms on the phone and start draining funds within an hour. So pretty quick access to move and steal your money that way. So it's kind of making its way here to the U.S. We're seeing it in different countries around the world where it's prevalent, and we're starting to see it pop up here now. So something to look out for. So if your phone does get stolen, contact your cell phone provider immediately, contact your bank and tell them, hey, this happened, because so much stuff is now linked to our phones. It's pretty much our whole identity in, one little square here, which is, 2024. All right. So I talked to you how my friends like to tease me. And let me unlock my phone here so I can actually play it for you. But they created my own deepfake for me so they can mess with me. I'm going to play it for you right now. This is not me.
Hello, Tom. This is Stephen with the United States Secret Service, and I'm calling you about your recent funds transfer incident. I can't share details over the phone, so I will email you some details that I've learned and will request additional details to assist in our investigation. Please be on the lookout for an email in the next hour or so. Thanks.
That's really good, because it does sound like you. I get voicemails from Stephen occasionally and talk to him on the phone. And it does sound like that. I mean, I think I would pick up if it was like a phone, if it was a live caller, because you and I have like certain banter that we have. But like if that was a voicemail, I'd feel compelled to call you back.
Yeah, and imagine that's coming from me. That you would already be on your guard because it's basically you're a victim of fraud. But imagine if it's from your bank, right? Imagine it's so and so from your bank that you've talked to before. Maybe they figured out, they saw in your email that you had an email from this one person. Maybe you're in private banking. And you have a specific, client customer manager that reaches out to you. They got into your email. They saw that guy. They did some open source research. They found a video of him on YouTube or on a social media, deep faked his voice, called you with that spoof card number, sent it right to voicemail, and you get this thing, from your bank that says, hey, we saw a security issue of odd login. Hey, can you go in and wire your funds out to our secure account? And, so now you have the email that tells you about this, and you have the phone call to back it up. All, fraud. Right. So powerful stuff. And
it seems like you can get all this for free on all the social media outlets. So it's like you really need to start watching who you accept as a follower or a friend, because they might just be some scammer.
Yeah, and I said before, this all started. It was you had the complexity of carrying out the breach, but now through open source and the weaponization of social media, you can go and find that. But I hope you like my cool little sunglasses I added here. I feel like that really adds to the deep fake from the Secret Service.
It made it feel more real.
Yeah. All right. So I wanted to, again, I'm getting better. I spent my $250, right, to make my BEC group. And, sometimes I don't write so good. So I need to figure out a way to write really well constructed emails. And who better than use generative AI? So I log in to the AI platform and I simply tell it, and Tom, please forgive my grammar here. I was doing this late at night, holding a newborn, seeing if I can figure this out. But write an email instructing receiver to change a bank account to send funds to for an invoice payment. Yes, I wrote that. Yes, it was late. Please forgive me. But it didn't matter because look what the generative AI did. They came up with a really well-worded email, a lot better than my grammar, and they lay out exactly what they would need, to send funds. So, hey, we changed our bank account. It happens. People do it all the time. So here's a new account name, something something LLC. Here's the new number, the bank name, bank address, and the routing number. Fun little foible here. So we used to always see our bad actors. They could never figure out the word routing and what that meant because I think it's only indicative to certain countries for banking. And so they would always spell this as routine because it would just autocorrect to routine because in their version of English, if they're using, whatever, it sees this as an error and just autocorrects to routine. Now so I could easily see that. If and I'll tell people this in my presentations, hey, if you see the word routine, it's a red flag. You're not sending any money. I don't care who it is. Pick up the phone. And if it is just a mistake, you call them and you mock them, a ton for a simple spelling mistake because it needs to be done. But now that's all out of here because the generative AI here fixes it for you. So, yeah, so real nice. And, even
maybe eventually that's what we'll have to look for to see if it's real is that I actually did do a typo.
Yeah. So actually, yeah. So now, think about that psychology of that too. So now, if it doesn't have a typo, it should be a red flag. Whereas,
right. Because there's certain words I always like security. I always transpose the end of it. So it's like if it got through the spell check, you knew it was me.
It's funny. I always misspell the word bureau.
I can see that one. There's a lot of stuff happening at the end of that one.
Yeah, that's why I work for the Secret Service because I could spell that.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Anyway, so real easy using generative AI here to create a nice little fraud email. And then let's get even better. Really, let's get into the psychology of it. I mentioned I have a newborn. He's about 2 months old now. I work a lot. I travel a lot. I, have limited time in the day to do pretty much anything. But say I'm not in that position, but say I want to go buy a new house, right? Say I was my family's growing. I got to move. I know I'm like, hey, all right, my closing's coming up. I need to go to a bank. I need to wire money out to, knock this down payment out. It's going to take an hour out of my day. I really don't want to do that. But imagine, you're sitting on your couch. You get an email from, looks like to be your closing company. It's 10 o'clock at night. I got the baby here. I got a beer here. I'm like, all right, this is good. I get this email. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, look at this. So what I did was I went to generative AI and I said, hey, draft an email that shows down payment from a bank account to a cryptocurrency wallet. Now, look at the wording I used. I just said down payment. I mentioned nothing about a home purchase here. It could be a down payment for anything, right? A car, some type of contracting service. Who knows? What have you. But generative AI thought, yeah, no, this dude's trying to buy a house. So, dear home buyer's name. I had nothing to do with that. Hope this email finds you well, blah, 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 blah. But then they put in this really good convincing paragraph, due to increased demand and accessibility, we're accepting payment in crypto, right? And they put their wallet info and, the type of crypto. And I think to myself, I'm sitting on my couch. I'm like, oh, okay, dude, I can knock this out right away. So I go open up my phone, go to my banking app. I also link my Coinbase wallet to that or whatever cryptocurrency wallet. And I send the amount of my down payment that I was going to tell my bank to send to my crypto wallet. And then as soon as it clears there, I immediately go in and just send it to the new crypto wallet. Bing, bang, boom, all from my couch that I did in 10 minutes. And I can, go about my merry way. Nice and easy. Real efficient, right? We're really playing on that efficiency. And that's it, right? But what happened was I just, wired my down payment to a crypto money launderer and it's gone, right? It's been moved to multiple hops now. It's in cold storage. Who knows? But yeah, so they're really starting to use the different technologies here to really play on the psychology of the victims to make their schemes that much more efficient. So, we really have to be on our toes and have that vigilance. All right. So real quick, if one of these does happen, obviously time is money, right? Get the banks involved first. So you guys can start helping. That's the banks or the number one touch point for trying to get money back for victims. Move your comms to out of band because you don't know what systems are compromised. So have a separate way to set up, whether it's, it could be something as simple as text messages, Teams, Slack, what have you, that's not an email system or whatever system you may believe was compromised. You can contact our local Secret Service field offices here. If it's something that's complex and you really need to reach out to the Brain Trust and the JIOC, we have an email address here. We are pretty good at getting money back. Since 2019, we've recovered about $385 million, give or take. So a fair amount of money we've recovered and gotten directly back to victims. And then file those reports, IC3.gov and FTC, Federal Trade Commission, Consumer Sentinel. File them both. Consult with internal or third party, and then obviously make any notifications if need be regarding that a breach occurred, because you could be protecting somebody else down the line. And so some quick key takeaways. It's going to continue to evolve in 2024. We're going to see the same basic MO with these advanced tactics and techniques that I just showed you. Increase vigilance, training, and awareness. Have that practice incident response plan in place. Know what to do if something happens. These should be treated as a when scenario, not as an if. So when something happens, not if. You can go back and look up some different tips we have here. We're in the process of updating all this info to push out for new 2024. Have these public-private partnerships in place where we can share this information. Both of these two things are information sharing and the partnerships. That way, you could be on the forefront of getting some threat intelligence about what's out there and then report what's going on, because there's no way we can help you if we don't know. Again, contact us if you need it, or if you want to reach out proactively, you can reach out and say, hey, I want to be part of your task force, or I want to receive notifications or stuff like that, and they will set you up with that. So that's what I got. Let's hit some questions real quick if we can fit some in.
Kind of at the end of our time, but let me, what would you say for like tabletops? How often should people do tabletops? Because you actually guys, some of your regional folks will join people for this stuff too, right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. We do them across the country. A lot of times I'm there. I go in person. We give a briefing. We roll out the scenario. We recommend tabletopping, at least maybe once a year, if not twice, because it may not be something that's going to happen to your firm, but there may be a derivation of it that does. And we really try to bring out scenarios that are complex and step related. So we're putting in everything. There'll be a BEC attack prior that led to a ransomware attack. Then there's, a bunch of data breaching, and then you have a bunch of different issues on that end. So we try to work through all these different little foils that you may see and that we see in an ongoing investigation.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, you hit all the stuff I did because I kept interrupting you. So
yeah, I like that. I like that. I think it's more,
I like it that way too, because it's because you and I just like talking anyway. But
yeah.
But yeah, finish if you wouldn't mind. Finish off typing out some of those answers for folks out in the audience. There, we'll get. We've got a networking break coming up, and then another round of sessions. But the only thing I would say to add to Stephen's key takeaways is like he said, time is money, friend. To quote one of my favorite video games, you need to know these people in advance. Know someone in the Secret Service. Know somebody from the FBI. Come to a secure world. Go to an InfraGard meeting. These people hang out with us. They hang out at these meetings. Know somebody there, because if you can make that phone call and get your $25 million back from that Zoom call you just got taken on, you probably should, right? So, I mean, you got to know these people. So I'll get off the soapbox.
Yeah,
that's right.
We're only here to help.
That's right. As always, great job, Stephen. We covered a lot of ground. Took a lot of time, actually, too. I've got to get everybody off to the networking break, what's left of it, and then our another round of sessions. So please bear with us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this great session. Hopefully you got some good intel that you can start doing. Reach out to Stephen if you have questions. They're there to help. That's what these guys want to do. They want to be proactive. So that when you call, they actually know what's up and they can help us. That being said, we'll see you at the next round of sessions. Take care, everybody.